do that. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday Q&A. I'm going to make one more adjustment here.
There we go.
Hope that you guys are off to a good day. Joe, I haven't even seen you today. Are you off to a good day?
Yeah. I've seen you running back and forth in and out of the office.
I've seen you. Yeah, I've seen you. We just have not interacted
It's been a busy week already.
Yeah. What have you noticed that some weeks are busier than others?
Yeah.
You picked up on that.
Yeah. It seems as though when one thing happens, then two or three others will jump in and.
Yeah, I always think like when there's a lull, when it's a quiet week, that's usually when something is going to. That's when my week is going to be crazy. So,
I don't remember a lot of lulls.
Yeah. And when when they happen, I'm not prepared for them, so I try to get
catch up.
Like that was one relaxing 3-day time period that passed by. So I'm going to get as much done as I can.
Yeah.
So what have you been working on this morning?
Well, I have a graveside service to do tomorrow afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so been kind of working on the message for that a little bit, and have a Bible study this afternoon. Prepared for that, and following up on a team train from last Saturday, and sent out some information to the team leaders, and so just kind of the keeping busy, keeping it going.
Yep.
Trying to stay on top of things.
Yeah. And I just spent about an hour and a half with Becky planning some stuff for Sunday, talking about some creative arts things.
Yeah.
So one of the things just on that, we've had a few people ask us just kind of for some updates on what's happening with our creative arts pastor search. Believe it or not, we are doing some things, and we have our annual meeting coming up. Not this Sunday the 24th, but Sunday the 31st.
Right.
Immediately following our 10:15 gathering. We're going to share a little update on what's happening with the creative arts pastor role here at that annual meeting. So
awesome.
There's nothing that's a secret about it, but we just want to make sure as many people kind of know what's going on as possible on that. So we're going to be sharing that. We have received some resumes. We've received some interest on that. So just doing some follow up with those people. I actually have someone I have to follow up with this week as well. So we'll have an update on that role on January 31st. And what I would encourage you to do if you're someone who's wondering what are we looking for, if you go to westwaychurch.com, at the top of the screen you'll see something that says job openings. If you click on that link, that will tell you not only some basics, but some pretty specific things that we're looking for in that role. So we posted that because we want you to know as our church body what it is that we're looking for. We want you to know as a church body what we're not looking for. If you hop onto that page, I think you'll have a pretty good sense of the kind of person that we are, the kind of person that we're looking for, and what we are expecting them to do in the way that we're expecting them to serve. So.
Yeah. A lot of people might think it's just a song leader.
Yep.
And it's so much more.
Yeah.
I used the J word.
You did. You said just.
It is so much more than getting on the stage and leading songs.
Yeah.
The week is full of preparations with teams and all kinds of things, and that will explain how that process works.
Yeah, and that's dramatically changed just in the last 10 months. So we're going to talk more about that on January 31st. So I would love for you if you are part of our body to be here. I don't think that's something. Actually, I'm 99.9% confident that is not going to be something we stream online.
Oh, right.
So we're going to do it afterwards.
Yeah.
And we'll make the notes and stuff available for people like we do every year. But all that to say, so we got a question. I'm going to, as I said, this morning I was in I was in conversation with Becky, who's our interim creative arts director, making plans for Sunday and the next few weeks as we begin our new series. But we have an old series question that we just got, and I got this question from someone. Let me see when they sent it to me. Okay, so they sent it to me at 10:57. So I've had about 3 more minutes than Joe has to look at this question, and I almost sent the person a text. Like one of the things I dislike about Facebook Messenger is it lets the other person know that you've seen their post.
Yep.
I like that, but I don't like that. And the thing that I knew I was coming in here, and I didn't want them to see that I saw it, and then So my next few hours are going to be pretty busy after this. We have a few appointments that we're doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't want them to think oh, John saw my question and now he's not going to answer it for 3 hours. So I thought, I'm going to spring it on Joe and we're just going to talk about it. So this week we talked about being a pro-love church.
Yeah.
And I would say our primary text that we discussed, we went through 1 Corinthians 13, and people are often familiar with 1 Corinthians 13 at a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been to a wedding, you've heard part of this. So I'm gonna read the wedding part that people are gonna be familiar with. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures throughout every circumstance. And then we have the beautiful moment in the wedding where the couple looks at each other and they'll light a candle or they'll pour sand into the thing, right? And what I said on Sunday was, this is not about a wedding.
Right.
Paul's writing to a church that they are acting in a lot of powerful ways. They're demonstrating gifts of the Spirit, and everyone has their specific spiritual gift, and that is, rather than bringing unity, it's tearing the church apart. And if you read through 1 Corinthians, you'll see this in the way that Paul talks.
Yeah.
Some people think their gifts are better than others. Other people feel like their gifts are worse than others. And it's a mess.
Yeah.
And what Paul says is you can have all of these great gifts, but if you don't love one another, who cares?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So if we had a symbol in here, I would smash it right now. And then he describes what love is.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the question that I got today.
Okay.
So I've been mulling and thinking since Sunday. I very much agree that 1 Corinthians 13 was not written for weddings. It was written for a constant reminder of the love we need to learn and display. I do, however, think it's a good wedding sermon. My marriage should be a representative of the church. The church was even called the bride of Christ. It's a good reminder of what God has called marriage to. It is more than a fairy tale with a happily ever after. Marriage is a way for us to learn and grow as a part of the church.
Okay. Is that a question or a statement?
I think it's I think it's great.
I do too. Yeah. In fact, when you were talking on Sunday morning and said that it isn't made for a wedding, in my mind, I said, kind of. And here's why. And they mentioned it. The church is referred to as the bride of Christ.
Right.
And the wedding that takes place is when we become a Christian. We become a part of the church, his bride.
Right.
And it is like a wedding.
Yeah.
In a sense. And the description that he's giving here of love is something that we want to encourage people to have within their marriage.
Right.
Just as Paul was encouraging the bride of Christ to exercise those things about love, to make sure that the love that we are sharing with each other is the love that God shares with us.
Right.
In our marriage with him, if you will.
Yeah.
But if we're going into a wedding and we're saying this is the kind of love that you have to have or your marriage isn't going to make it, and we're expecting them to have that kind of love all the time, that may be a fairy tale.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we spent, so we started that Wife of Christ series back in 2019.
Yeah.
And we took a little break in 2020 in the midst of the crazy. And then we came back to that Wife of Christ series. Like one of the things that we talked about was, and I think that's what, this person says.
I think that's where that's coming
my
from.
marriage should be a representative of the church. Like, that's completely consistent with Scripture. Like my marriage to Ann is a reflection and a representation of what, or ought to be.
And I would say it is.
Stop.
Yeah.
it ought to be reflective and a representation of the relationship between Christ and the church. And if I flip that, the relationship between Christ and the church, if I want to know how to be in a marriage that honors God, I need to look at the relationship that Christ has with the church. Yes. And then now I'm going to flip that. Yeah. Questions for me to ask and questions for Ann and I to wrestle with are things like, how is my marriage accurately portraying the truth about Jesus and the truth about the church, and how that relationship works together.
Yeah, and I love the statement. I think you're right on, whoever sent that to us. I think they did it probably timely, hoping that we would share that. Because I know that my wife and I have identified people and marriages within the church that reflect the kind of love that Christ has for the church.
Right.
And we have identified those people as being goals for us. That kind of marriage is a goal for us. We would like our marriage to be like that. I want to treat my wife like some men that I have seen treat their wives. Right. Because I see these things that Paul lists here happening in their marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things I like about this comment, and you're right, there's not a question behind it. One of the things I like about the comment behind it is 1 Corinthians 13 is completely appropriate for a wedding if I understand what Paul's heart is behind the text.
Yes.
So, and then I know on Sunday when I was talking about this, I called out a couple who I'm performing their wedding.
Right. This summer.
I called them out. And what I said was not entirely true. Like if we're reading 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 as just kind of part of a beautiful ceremony and a feel-good moment, and we're going to read this, and now we're going to light a unity candle or pour the sand, that does not express the fullness of what Paul was going for here. Yeah. Because so when we lived in Illinois, the church that we were at in Illinois, one of the things that my lead pastor said one time was, he said, his phrase was, "No more beautiful ceremonies." And I think we tend to look at things like weddings or baby dedications, or think about anything within that realm. It's just this beautiful ceremony where we go and this wonderful thing happens, and then we all just kind of go back to our normal lives. And the heart of what he was talking about is, a wedding is not just a beautiful ceremony. Right. It's a reflection of Christ and the church. So, Jaime and Olivia, if you're watching this, If you want me to talk about 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, I'm gladly going to do it, and I already know how I'm going to talk about it.
It's going to be more than skin deep.
Yes, yes. It's not just something that we like. Oh, we have to have a Bible verse, and I know Jaime and Olivia, and they don't think this way.
Right.
It's not just about we should just have a Bible verse, and this is an appropriate one for us to read, and then we all leave there and we all feel good about ourselves.
Yeah. And I would say in when I hear you talk about that, no more beautiful ceremonies. That's what he's saying is there's so much more than just the beauty.
Yeah.
In any relationship.
Right.
And true beauty really does come from deeper within than just the beautiful part that we see on the outside.
Yeah.
And every relationship is going to have times we have to work through,
right,
and things we have to say that might be a little hurtful sometimes.
Right.
And if we're pointing those things out without love involved in that,
right,
then we're just like that clanging cymbal. And eventually people are going to see they don't really mean what they're saying. Right. They're just gabbing. Yeah. Yeah.
I love the way that at the end they said marriage is a way for us to learn and grow as a part of the church. Like if I'm wondering, when I just think about, my wife and I were actually having this conversation this morning. I'm trying to remember what the context was. I think we were talking about, someone that we know is currently living in the home of someone else. And there's just a little bit of difficulty. They're having a little bit of friction, and I remember that was the conversation we were having. We were talking about this person who's currently living with another family, and I said something like, you know what, it's difficult when you're living with someone like that. And then my wife said to me, well, John, sometimes it's difficult to live with you. And I'm like, come on, what would be so hard about that? But I think when I think about just the difficulty of what it's like to be around someone all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I just think, man, the amount of patience and love that Jesus has for his church.
Yeah.
Like, when he looks down, I don't want to be very careful with what I just said. When Jesus interacts with the church, sometimes I imagine in my mind, and I know he doesn't do this because he has perfect love. If I were Jesus and I were looking at the church and looking at some of the behaviors, a lot of the behaviors of the church, I would just be like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you get this? How come you haven't figured this out yet?
Yeah.
But instead, he responds in love. Mm-hmm. He responds these ways, these things that 1 Corinthians 13 points out to us. He responds in patience and kindness and not jealous and not boastful or not proud or not rude. Like it is an example, and that's what this person is really getting at here. My relationship with my wife is supposed to be demonstrative of the relationship of Christ in the church.
Yeah. I really, that one right after where you stop there, keeps no record of wrong. Mm. That speaks of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we learn that kind of love, when we can let things in the past be in the past and say, we're going to move forward from this. We're not going to bring that up anymore.
Yeah.
And we're going to grow from the experience, but that's okay. I forgive you.
Yeah.
That is love.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we talked about on Sunday is how as Christians we're called to be countercultural.
Yeah.
So whatever our culture says is good and right and perfect, we want to be the opposite of that. And I was actually thinking about this morning. Man, we live in an age where we do keep a record of being wronged.
Yeah.
And I kind of hinted about that on Sunday. Like, if I'm going to go back 10 years into somebody's Twitter history or Facebook posts and see what they posted 10 years ago, that's absolutely keeping a record of what's wrong. Now, it also says it doesn't rejoice about injustice. So we want to be forgiving.
Yeah.
God calls us to forgive. God calls us to reconcile.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are not supposed to hold on to things. And I just
Yeah.
so many of those kinds of things that I see, all I think about is, man, how terrible must it be for that to be judged based on the worst thing you ever did?
Yeah.
How many of who among us could stand up to the scrutiny that our culture tries to bring up? Imagine you writing something or saying something 10 or 15 years ago and having your entire life judged based on that one thing.
Yeah, with the assumption that I never grew, I never learned what was right, I never ever did what was right. I'm still doing that same thing.
Right.
After 15 years later. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
At all.
And I when I see and I hear those kinds of things, I'm so thankful that I have a God who loves me enough to not judge me based on the worst thing I ever did.
Yeah.
He looks at that, and it's really kind of bizarre. Instead of saying, "Hey, look how," well, he does say, "Look how," Ephesians 2, look how terrible this person is, and I have saved him anyway.
Yeah.
I just love that about love.
Ken Davis, a Christian comedian, who was scheduled to be in the grandparenting seminar this year, which has been moved back, and we have a date for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, in one of his videos, he talks about how God's not standing around up there watching us and saying, "Oh, look what Joe just did," boom, and stomping on him.
Right.
God's saying, "Oh, look what Joe just did. He did it again." and then he has that understanding of, but I still love him.
Right.
And he's going to make it.
Right.
Because I sent my son for him.
Right. And that's why we've talked a few times, and I've done this on a Sunday morning. Try to imagine yourself for a minute. Close your eyes and try to imagine yourself for a minute. Being able to be in the throne room of God when you have just sinned. And I think a lot of times our where we go is oh, I cannot believe that Joe did this thing again. I cannot believe that John did this thing again.
Yeah.
How many times me? How many times me does John have to do this thing? And I think that's this trick and this ploy that Satan has on us, that God is so angry and so consistently upset with us. And what the Bible tells us is that we are to go boldly into the throne room of grace and receive mercy and receive love.
Yeah.
And what would it be like, and I'm going to tie this back to this person's comment and thoughts, what would it be like if our marriages reflected that?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh man, John, because that's how it usually goes in my house. How many? And I'm not saying that. I mean, my wife is right in that. How many times do I have to do that? But what would it be like for us, for our marriages to reflect the character traits that Paul writes about in 1 Corinthians 13? Not because they weren't written for a wedding, but they're perfect for a wedding. In that these are the kinds of things that God desires in us because of the relationship between Christ and the church.
Yeah. I can tell you that there are people that I have seen, like I mentioned earlier, that have had a huge impact on my life.
Right.
Because of that reflection.
Right.
And if that happened worldwide or even nationwide, and those principles and concepts were lived out through genuine love, what a great place this would be to live. And someday we're going to be in a place like that.
Right.
And that's the neat thing, is we can look forward to understanding that love completely and fully between each other and between, we already have it from God.
Right.
But we're going to see that between each other someday.
Right.
Yeah.
So, not written for a wedding, and if the context is correct, perfect for a wedding.
Yeah.
And perfect but not just perfect for a wedding, perfect for all of our relationships.
Right.
How do I take this? And this is actually what part of what we're going to be talking about as we begin our next series on Sunday. Like, how is the Bible, the phrase that we're going to use is timely. How is the Bible timely? I'm not going to say how does it apply to me. I'm going to say how is it timely.
Yeah.
Like because I think a lot of times people have this misperception that this is some 2,000-year-old book and or older, and it doesn't mean anything for me. Like, why would I care about what Moses wrote or what God had to say to a people who lived 3,000 years ago? Why should I care?
Yeah.
And that's like timeliness. So when I read 1 Corinthians 13, like, this is timely. This is I'm trying to remember how I say it. It's not about me, but it's for me. I think that's how I say it.
Yeah.
It's not about me, but it's for me.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So as I said, this week we're going to start off our How the Bible Works series. I would encourage you to be here. This week is all about the Bible is trustworthy. And why is it trustworthy? This is what Becky and I spent 45 minutes of our time together talking about today. Like, we're going to talk about some things that demonstrate why the Bible is trustworthy in our lives, how we can trust it. So, Grandparenting Conference.
Yes, originally it was scheduled for the middle of March.
Originally,
the second time it was scheduled for the middle of March.
Right.
Originally it was scheduled for last September.
Right.
And it was moved back because of COVID. Once again, it's been moved back because of COVID, and it is moved back to October. And I don't remember
21st and 22nd.
I knew it was 20 something.
I changed it to I fixed it all on the calendar today.
Yay! And I left my phone with my calendar in my office. But so those of you that have grandchildren or will have grandchildren someday, you don't have to be a grandparent to attend this seminar. There are lots of people that have children that are hoping to be grandparents. This is an awesome experience that we would love to have you join us here at Westway when we join the conference via the web, a live feed from the conference that will be held in Georgia, I believe. I think it's still going to be at the same place in Georgia. Alabama.
Georgia, it's kind of like, you know what? People don't know where Nebraska is. I don't expect someone who's not from the South to know the difference between Georgia and Alabama. So I grew up in Georgia. So I will not keep that record of wrong for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I will point it out,
right.
but I will not.
Yeah, which is what God does with us.
But I will not keep a record.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to join them
right.
in that live here. And if you're in this area, we would love to have you join us when we do that. And we will be sending out more information within a 200-mile radius. We're trying to get that information out. Yep. And if you want to come anyway from further away, you're welcome to do that also.
Yep.
But we went personally, what's it been, 2 years ago now? It was a little over 2 years ago.
I think it was 2019. Yes, it was February of 2019.
February of 2019. And
yeah.
And so we're almost to that 2 years ago mark, and we and our wives went to that seminar in California. Yeah. And we're sold. Yeah. We really believe that God is using this organization to minister to families around the world now. And so watch and listen for more on that.
Yep. Thanks for watching. We appreciate getting questions even when they are 10 minutes before we go live. We get to do that. So thanks for doing that. We encourage you to interact with us as much as possible because this is like, I love doing this as much as
I do too.
As much as I love like what I do on Sundays, and I love what I do on Sundays. I love being able to interact and get feedback and have conversations about the things that we're talking about.
Yep.
So that's a good thing for us. Yep. So thanks for watching. We will hopefully see you on Sunday or one of our many other ways that we communicate throughout the week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
God bless.